Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Steve on a 12 post list, not actually lands, it's going to be 12 post versus Lucas on Blue Red Delver. Cloud post leading out for Steve in multiples. That gets out of hand so quickly. Of course, it's exponential growth as opposed to linear growth. One cloud post taps for 1, 2, each of them tap for 2, meaning 4 total mana. You'll have just 4 cloud posts out. That's going to be 16 mana. You can be hard casting Emrakul. This gets out of hand so rapidly that we do see Wasteland in hand for Lucas, which has got to be the most important card in this matchup for him, trying to rein in the incredible mana production that Cloud Post can create. Of course, every turn, Delver's going to be doing 3 damage to Steve now. Oh, and another Delver. This is actually getting out of hand quite quickly. Those Cloud Posts can also make Daze an embarrassing card. Very often having extra mana kicking around when you're tapping your lands for 2, 3, 4 mana. Daze becomes a non-player. It's one of the most important cards in the deck, so if you can take Daze out of the equation, we're definitely hurting part of Delver's strategy. Pithing Needle is actually going to be stopping Wasteland as well, so it's going to be a race to see what Steve can do. That first Wasteland did so much damage, essentially getting rid of a Mishra's Workshop, possibly more. That first Cloud Post, if that was still around, yeah, Steve would be untapping with 16 mana. Instead, oh, actually, he might not be untapping. Double Bolt? Is this going to be lethal? Double Bolt? Oh, look at this. Very fast for Blue-Red Delver. Delver didn't even flip. Well, one of them didn't even flip. Still pushing through lethal damage thanks to the double Lightning Bolt. That reach from Delver, very dangerous. Shows us why Blue-Red is the most popular build right now. Traditionally, there were quite a few different builds of Delver. You had Blue-Red, Rug, Bug, you name it, Blue-Black at times. And currently, it's really all about Blue-Red Delver. Dragon's Rage Channeler really pushed us in that direction. Of course, Ragavan was the initial thing that gave us that nudge. Murktide also kind of... So the fact that you don't have to go into green for something like Tarmogoyf or black for something like Gurmad Angler is also a bit of a consolidating factor. So even though it's not specifically a red card, it does kind of make blue-red the default because you don't have that reason to go into the third color like we previously have had a need for those beefy creatures that can potentially survive opposing lightning bolts or be a legitimate clock all on their own. Murktide certainly does that, and it is just blue, to the point where we've even seen mono blue decks at times for Delver, though right now that red splash so strong. Dragon Rage Channel is incredibly good, as we just saw. Lightning Bolt been amazing since Alpha. Of course, Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast, very dangerous cards in the mirror match, which you can expect if you're playing this deck. Not unusual for it to be 10 to 20% of a given metagame. Some people don't enjoy playing it. I actually enjoy playing Delver, but honestly, if I'm going to be sleeving up something with Force and Daze, Brainstorm, Ponder, I'm going to be playing Cephalid Breakfast at this point. I like to be able to just win on the second turn. Maybe just because I have things to do. Sitting around all day trying to beat people down with 1/1s. So it is of note here that Lucas's build isn't strictly blue-red Delver. We see an Underground Sea there, and he did previously have Baleful Strix out. That's a bit of a nod to the mirror. The ability to have the 1/1 Death Touch trade off against any of these quality threats on the other side, or at the worst case, trade off with a piece of removal. If you play a Baleful Strix and then they bolt it or Pyroblast it after it's entered the battlefield and you've drawn a card, you are kind of on your way to victory. There's a Lightning Bolt in hand, but no red mana yet. Elvish Reclaimer on the other side of the board would really become a massive problem. He will turn every one of these lands into a cloud post if given enough time. 4 land drops in. Steve will be able to cast like literally anything. 5 lands, and you're going to be able to use Eye of Ugin to tutor up Emrakul. So there's a bit of inevitability on Steve's side. Fortunately for him, Lucas has this pair of Delvers, which if they flip, kind of gets rid of that inevitability. He'll just be dead in like 3 turns. But if Steve can find a way to clear them, perhaps a Blast Zone. Search with Elvish Reclaimer. Ooh, Tabernacle. Now this does work quite well with Yavimaya, though I don't really love it right now. I'm just trying to understand exactly what's happening here. Endurance getting rid of the graveyard? Is this just to try and prevent a Murktide? Yes, it is. Delvers flip and send. Oh, those triggers were miss for Tabernacle. Elvish Reclaimer. I actually wish they'd change the tournament rules for Tabernacle. I think the person that owns the card should be responsible for announcing that trigger. It wouldn't take much to change that. As it stands, Tabernacle gives that ability to the opposing creatures, and we could actually see a change in tournament rules quite easily to make it so the person that owns the Tabernacle is the one responsible for catching that trigger. Ultimately, where we end up seeing kind of feels bads from it is the Tabernacle player is incentivized to remind other player about the trigger at kind of the worst possible time. So one of the more unpleasant way that I've seen the rules play out is somebody with a Gurmag Angler on board has a Tabernacle trigger. The opposing player allows that not to be caught and then waits until the player taps out to play a True Name Nemesis and then announces the trigger. So you don't really have to announce the triggers. I'm just not in love with it. I don't find that it's a great tournament experience. And, they can improve it. It's on kind of in their court. Hopefully they do at some point. Oh, and these endurances just coming down to evoke. I am not sure what I just saw there. There could have been an interesting trick. I'm quite perplexed by the way these endurances have played out. So you could get great value by forcing your opponents to attack with their Dragon's Rage Channeler and then use endurance post attacks before blocks and then get your Elvish Reclaimer in front of the Dragon Rage Channeler. Could get some value if you're incapable of casting the endurance. At least get rid of the opponent's graveyard and shrink those Dragon Rage to make them something that not only can be blocked but dies in combat. See a Bajuka Bog continually going after this graveyard. Glimmer Post. This one feels like it could have been very winnable for Steve. Could actually just be a bunch of uncounterable lines here. He's got 4 different lands. I'd love to see these being cloud posts. Eventually, Eye of Ugin to tutor up a colorless Eldrazi and just blow the game wide open. Dragon Rage Channeler is not putting a huge amount of pressure on his life. He's still at 15. Here, this is too conservative of an approach. Tabernacle repeatedly tapping. Thanks to Yavimaya. Green Urborg, Freeborg, whatever you want to call it. This card ends up being a bit of mana acceleration when combined with things like Tabernacle and Maze of Ith, most notably Dark Depths, allowing the lands that don't usually get to tap for mana. Add that green. Very useful. Wasteland, not super strong right now. As long as Steve can have a couple of mana open, he can sacrifice in response with the Elvish Reclaimer, which is what we see. Wasteland kind of just thrown in the bin there. Not loving it. Could have went after Tabernacle even. That would have had a little bit of utility, as there's not likely to be a second Tabernacle in the list. Card that's pretty tough to come by. Well, that's not entirely true if you're from around here. I've got Tabernacles, but it's expensive. Let's say that. If you need a Tabernacle, probably the guy to talk to. Got Petty Theft, looking to bounce. Dragon Rage channelers have been repeatedly shrunken. These could actually get pretty big all of a sudden. I mean, Steve has spent so much time trying to keep these Dragon Rage channelers small. And he's down to 9 thanks to a lightning bolt. Boy, this could be it. It's going to be 9 in the air. It is. He has gotten the requisite cards in the graveyard thanks to all of the surveilling off of his instance. And Lucas takes that one down. Short order versus 12 post.